I know a lot of people make a lot of money, but they don't have anything left, right? That's not setting ourselves up to live the best life, because we want to win, we want the ability to give, and at the end, we want the ability to do good.
Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast, a Ben Kinney training production. In this podcast, we will be discussing the concepts of health, wealth, leadership, and legacy. My name is Chad Himes. I'm one of your hosts during this podcast, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Bob Stewart. Hey, Bob.
Hi, Chad. How you doing?
I'm fantastic. Thank you. Bob, I want to jump right into this one today, and we're going to get you to give us that word of the day to kind of be listening to for this episode. So what's that word that everybody that's listening or watching should have in their mind while they're hearing what's coming?
Buckets.
Buckets.
Buckets. I just like to say that word. Diversity, diversification, but for me it's buckets today.
Okay, buckets. Diversification.
Yeah.
It's a way better word. We'll go with that one and let you just say that. Now let's jump to the conversation because, Bob, you talked with Ben about how to make more and why we should make more. So let's jump into that conversation now.
So Ben, in episode 1, you mentioned the idea of making money, and you had said that most of us probably need more than we even think, and there's 3 reasons why we actually make money. So refresh us on what those 3 reasons are.
So Bob, sometimes we get comfortable and we actually think that we're making enough money because all of our needs are actually taken care of. But what I found in my life and being around so many people is there are actually reasons why we need to make more. And in episode 1, we talked about first one for emergencies, that you never know when one of us is going to get sick, or our children or spouse or partner is going to get cancer or car wreck or whatever that emergency might be. Number 2, for opportunities. There's opportunities all around us, and it seems like opportunities are unevenly distributed amongst the population. It's just the population unevenly has the opportunity to do that because they don't have the time or capital to take advantage of it. And number 3, we talked about how money actually can make you happy, and it makes you happy from the ability for you to buy your time back. And when you buy your time back, you're able to spend your time with the people that you love and care about, doing the things that you enjoy, creating memories and having experiences. And for those 3 reasons, we truly never know how much we're going to need to make in our lives. I'm just saying that we're probably more than what we are today.
Okay. So Ben, just like many things, you have a system and a model that you've built around this concept, and you promised that you'd share it with us. You call it the buckets of wealth. So let's hear it. Like, where did this come from, first of all, before we dive into what that actually means?
One of my first real jobs was at the cable company, and my manager, his name was Dominic, and Dominic was a phenomenal guy, just a great guy, somebody I truly care and love today. However, his company, AT&T, TCI, Comcast, back then they always encouraged the employees to put all their money into company stock. So every time he got his paycheck, he took his 5% or 10% or 15% and he bought a couple more shares of AT&T or TCI, whatever the company was. Well, somewhere in the early 2000s, about the dot-com days, right? This guy who was a couple years away from retirement, he was in his 60s and thinking that he was going to retire in a couple years, and he showed me his retirement statement once, and he showed me the millions of dollars that he had in his retirement account. And I remember seeing him break down one day, and he came in and he said it's almost all gone because the stock had crashed so much. The stock market had gotten so bad. He had all of his eggs in the one basket. Well, you fast forward into 2008 to 2010 in the real estate market. I had friends that owned golf courses and had hundreds or thousands of lots, or owned lots of rental properties. They had too much debt tied to it, and they were too over leveraged. And by the time it was 2010 or 2011, they had lost everything. They had all their eggs in one basket again. And I have friends also, Bob, that have spent the last 10 or 15 years putting every dollar that they've ever made back into that one business that they own, and they've never taken any money off the table. And some disruption like Amazon or Google or the economic change or technology change could come and just wipe out everything they have because they had too many things in one bucket. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to create a wealth plan, a making plan, a retirement plan for me that was as stable as this chair that I'm sitting on. How many legs does these chairs have?
4.
4. So if you had 4 legs to a chair, it'd be a lot more stable than a chair that had 3 legs or 2 legs or 1 leg, right? But if you could add an extra leg, it'd even be more stable. Because if one of those things was not going good at the time, right, you'd still be sitting on it.
Yeah.
So I had this idea of what if I divided my wealth into different buckets, and I never had all my eggs in that one bucket or that one basket, so to speak. So I came up with what I called the buckets of wealth, and there's 5 different buckets. Each one has a different purpose and a different amount of risk and a different growth opportunity.
Okay, so let's take them in order here. Let's start with reserves. Why is this one important? What is this one first, and then why is reserves important?
So we take whatever it costs us to live. So you take your house payment, your car payment, whatever you pay for food and cheeseburgers and movies or whatever you do every month, right? You come up with a budget. I try to make sure that I have a couple of months of that saved up into my checking account, where it's protected so that I know if I ever had to go without work for a couple of months, I'd be okay. Everything above that amount, let's say that we could live on $4,000 a month. So if I saved up $10,000 or $12,000, everything above that I would take out and I'd spread it into these different buckets. And in the short term, those buckets are bank accounts. These or could be envelopes, right, or coffee cans. It doesn't matter. They're just different buckets that you're going to set money aside so that when you have an opportunity or you have a place to put it, it's reserved for that leg of your chair. So the first one, as you pointed out, is reserves. That's just excess cash. Cash is king. I remember being real estate rich in 2008 and having a lot of equity in the couple of homes that I owned, and all of a sudden the market crashed, and it wasn't that the properties dropped in value that much, but the banks wouldn't allow me to refinance. They closed my line of credit. I couldn't access.
That equity was frozen.
It was frozen. And because of that, I didn't have the capital to take advantage of the other opportunities because all my cash was wrapped up in something that wasn't liquid. So the first bucket is about having a separate bank account, preferably at a whole different bank than because it's too tempting when you're at Nordstrom's or Cabela's or wherever you go, right, to access a whole separate bank account where you put some cash in there to build up for opportunities or emergencies above and beyond your own personal reserve account. So that's all that is. First bucket, extra cash. It could be in gold bars, it could be in rolls of quarters, it could be
Bitcoin.
In a bank account somewhere else, right?
Okay. So
something stable.
So we've got reserves. Next is real estate.
So one of the best ways to build wealth, in my opinion, is investing in real estate, and especially your own primary residence. So if you're at a point in your career where you don't own real estate yet, one of the things you have to do is you have to save up a down payment. So when I started, I had my down payment savings account where I would put my $50 or $100 in there every month until I saved up enough money to where I could put the down for the very first home that I purchased. After that, I just kept the account, Bob, and I kept putting that same amount of money, that 50 or $100, right, and build it up until I had saved enough money to buy that next piece of real estate. So this is my real estate down payment account. This allows me to add a second leg to my chair. I got cash, right, and now I got real estate investing where I'm buying primary residence or other homes for me to own, and that's the second bucket. You want to have real estate assets, which requires cash in the account to buy that asset.
Okay. So we keep moving down. What's next? Financial instruments.
Financial instruments is a fancy word for saying stocks, bonds, 401k, IRA. It's just a bucket that you're going to say, I'm going to put money into something that can grow over time, like stocks or mutual funds, etc. One of the best ways to start is to ensure that you're maximizing the amount of money you can contribute to your IRA and 401k every year so that you aren't paying taxes on that excess income. The IRS has set it up so you can put a certain amount of money every single year into an IRA or into a 401k or self-employed 401k, whatever you qualify for, where you can remove that income from what you tell the IRS you made that year, thus paying less taxes. That's kind of step one. Step 2 would be maybe opening a stock account and putting money every month into your Acorns account or into your Robinhood stock buying account, where you're just going to start making some small investments. Those small investments over time, you wake up one day and you realize that they really added up to a lot.
You wake up and you realize you bought Amazon or something.
Yeah, right? You bought the right thing.
Yeah.
I remember hearing a story from Warren Buffett. And I went to one of his live events where he does a state of the company of his Berkshire Hathaway
Shareholder meeting.
Yeah. And he said, if I would have put $10,000 into a stock account when I was 16, and I would have never touched it, never taken a dollar out, just left it all in there to grow, and I would have only invested in one thing, which was the S&P 500 mutual fund. So it would be a mutual fund that was based on the equivalent 500 companies that were in the S&P, right? Mm-hmm. And I never touched it. He said, guess how much it would be worth today?
$10,000 when he was 18.
So 16, I think it was.
16, and we can assume at that point he was probably in his 70s or something.
Yeah, I mean, he's older than shit today, right? But he let it sit there. He said, how much would it be worth today? And I was going in my head, and I was thinking, God, I bet you it's worth a lot of money. It's $5 million, or, because they only started with $10,000.
Yeah.
He said it'd be worth $52 million today if you just would have put that in there and never touched it. That blew me away, right? I just thought, like, how fast could we change the lives of our children or our friends or ourselves if we just put a little bit of money into an account, invested it in the S&P 500, and never touch it.
Tied to some index that historically over its entirety has just, had whatever 6% growth or 4 to 8 probably.
And just allow it to compound. So you could do that by putting a one-time lump sum in there like Warren recommended, or you could simply put $50 a month in there, or 10% or 5% or 3% or whatever you could afford, right? So, and just allow it to grow and build up and never touch it. The problem that people have is they see their retirement account, that bucket, as a spending account. And when they want to pay off their debt from their bad habits, or they want to buy that next house, or they want to buy that car, or whatever that thing is, they don't find a way to grind it out and do it. They take it out of there, and they lose the benefit of that money growing over time.
I mean, I think all of these buckets, there's this idea that the money's going in there to stay in there or to work for me, right? Like real estate, you take the money out to go buy the real estate, but now you have an asset that's performing and growing, right? But each of these things, like those cash, I'm using that cash to take advantage of an opportunity, right? But these just go in and stay in.
Yeah, same with real estate. This is buckets of wealth. This is putting it in the bucket and leaving it.
Stays.
Can you think of a property that your mom or dad drove by 30 years ago where they'd say, hey, Bob, I'm sure glad I didn't buy that one?
Yeah, right.
That doesn't exist.
It's the opposite,
there
right?
isn't
So
a
I
property.
had a chance to buy that in 83, and God, I'm kicking myself ever since.
If I only would have bought that one, my life would be way, way different today, right? Yeah, so it's about putting them in there and leaving it. The next bucket is into our business. And this could be investing in stock in the company that you work for, like my boss did. My boss's only mistake, that was the only bucket he had. Because that stock eventually recovered. But to him, it was catastrophic because it took those years for that to happen. It's important that you invest in either the business that you own, businesses other people own but they're running, or the business that you work for. That just becomes your fourth bucket. But a business is only worth something if it has a net income. So one of the things that we'll talk about over time in our podcast is about turning your business into an asset that has long-term value, that could potentially be sold, right, invested in, or divested or given to your brat children or something, because you want to build it over value, build value in your business over time.
Okay. So what's the last bucket?
And the last bucket is having a bucket available for giving. And I believe that you start by giving by taking care of your household, paying off your own debt first, then paying off your children's debt, and then giving to your community, and then giving to the world. And allowing that fifth bucket to start off with paying off your debt will free up more money in the future to give more and to put into these other buckets. Then paying off your children's debt, their college or your family or people you care about, and then given to the community allows you to not give away all your money, but to have a certain amount of it getting put towards this thing that we call purpose. It's the third word in our podcast. It's the give part, right? How do we have something that gives us joy and purpose to do something that we wouldn't normally do on our own?
It's funny, I think a lot of people would kind of wonder about putting giving in these buckets of wealth, but there's tax advantages there, right? And then you also tie it into your legacy.
Absolutely, yeah. And a lot of people are doing it anyway, whether they're doing it for their church or doing it for some other organization they care about. The mistake that they make, I believe, is they tend to give to those things before they take care of their own household, right? Instead of first paying off their debt or first putting these other accounts into place so that they could protect their family, they give it all away too quick. Now, the amount of money that we can give away today is exponential to what I could have gave away a couple years ago, and we do give away so much more today because we were able to build enough wealth over the last 10 to 15 years to make it actually impactful today.
Okay, so I'm looking here and I heard you say like, I'd put $50 in my real estate account here and there. Are you each month kind of divvying up whatever's left and then, 20% of it goes here, 20% goes there? Is that kind of the approach? Because it seems overwhelming. It seems like if I only, if my paycheck today is leaving me $100 at the end of the month, I'm thinking $20 in a reserve account or a real estate account. Like that's not really, talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, people don't get started because they don't think they have enough to get started. So then they never get started, right? But if you just started with $50 and you did that for 3 years, you'd wake up and you'd have a down payment for a house. Right? You got to get started. In fact, I'll tell you a story. A friend of mine sent me a message and said, "Have you seen this show?" And I said, "No. Is it on Amazon?" And I get Amazon Prime for free because I get the free shipping, right? And she said, "No, it's on Hulu." And I said, "I'm not a Hulu subscriber, unfortunately." And she said, "Come on, you can afford Hulu. It's only $9 a month."
Sure.
So I took that number. I went back and I said, if I would invest that $9 a month for the next 10 years, right? And I got my average return that I got today, and I didn't buy Hulu, it's worth $88,000. And I forget the exact math and term or whatever it was, but I responded back with, $10 doesn't seem like a lot to you. But to me, over a period of time, the next 10, 20, or 30 years, it means a lot to me. It's $88,000, and I've never seen $88,000 in your garbage can.
Plus, let me just have your Hulu password. Like, what's the...
Seriously. Hulu will no longer be a sponsor of this podcast. Yeah. But it's about coming up with a system. You could set a goal. You're going to say, I'm going to spend 80% of whatever I make, me and my family or whoever's contributing to your household, on my rent and my living and car and all that kind of stuff. 20% I'm going to put into the buckets. But you might say, I'm not at that point right now. So you're going to have to increase your income to make it that. But you might be able to live on 90% and put 10% in there. For me, it started $50 a month into 4 or 5 accounts, which means I had to have an extra $200 every month to do it. I woke up a couple years later and I had enough money for my first down payment of my first property, right? And then I did it again, and I saved up enough money for my next property, and I put money into my retirement account, and I had money set aside to start a business, and I was finally able to quit that job at the cable company and start my own business because I had been saving up money into that business account. And I woke up one day and it was working, and over time I got to increase the amount. It was no longer $50, then it was $100, then it was $500, then it was $1,000, and it grew and it compounded until it's actually pretty significant, the amount of real estate and businesses and things that we do on a regular basis today.
All this thing, this win, make, give, this whole concept all works together so well because you could go out there and be making tons of money, and if you're not managing that money properly, or you put it all in one basket and that basket collapses, like all that winning you did didn't matter, right? Like when you have that model or that system for building the wealth, this seems manageable for most people.
I know a lot of people make a lot of money, but they don't have anything left. I know a lot of people spend a lot of time and energy on their business, and it's never worth anything. And I know a lot of people spend a lot of time in a job or a career, and they have nothing left at the end. And they have to go get that second or third job, or they have to go move in with their children or whatever, right? That's not setting ourselves up to live the best life, because we want to win make, we want the ability to give, and at the end, we want the ability to do good. So what you'll see in our following podcast and getting to know our guest speakers and hearing more models and systems for us, we'll dive into a model for saving and a model for reducing your expenses and a model for investing in real estate, a model for financial instruments and building a business and the type of business, and even models for giving. And you'll learn over time that there is a path, there is a plan, there is a way for you to do it. You're not excluded. I came from nothing, right? So many of our people, they came from nothing, right? You can have whatever life you want to have, as long as you're willing to spend the next umpteen years or couple of years to put these habits in place.
Habits, it's all about habits.
We don't have a plan to save people's lives tomorrow. We don't have the lottery winning numbers, but we have a model and a system to change your life in the next 5 to 10 years. I can promise that.
I don't even know what to say when it comes back from some of these conversations, because wow, I hear him again and again, yet I still want to say wow every time when I listen to it. He takes those things and he just breaks them down for us, Bob. You've heard this conversation many, many, many times. You've been a part of this conversation with people many, many, many times. You just had the conversation again with Ben. What's your takeaway hearing it yet again?
I think for me, we have comfortable lives, Chad, you and I both, right? I think most of us that are probably listening to this podcast have comfortable lives. The thing that, listening to this again, having that conversation with him, it's the suddenness of what could happen, right? So I get up every day, my family's provided for as long as I can continue providing. Right. But if I got cancer tomorrow, if I got in a car accident when I was driving home, things could dramatically change fast, and then what? And so for me, it's that idea that, I might be comfortable now, and a lot of people kind of live in that comfort. Ben's saying it's selfish to be comfortable almost, right? There's these things that could happen. That unforeseen future is not something that we should be leaving to risk. And, we're risking that thing's not going to happen, right? So, to me, that's the part that, the why of why we make it. It just drove it home, I guess, hearing it.
Yeah, it's a great point you bring up, Bob, because we've all had that moment where, oh my gosh, if we were a second sooner or a second later, we hit that other car. Or a second sooner, or a second later, we miss this, or that ends up happening. You're right, we don't know how quickly something could change in our lives. It's a great point. To me, it was hearing how Ben breaks it down, and it can start so small. All of us are out there usually thinking, if I'm going to do this, I need to have the money. I need this extra money to be able to put aside, so when I make it, then I'll start. And what did he do? He took $50 at first, and he was just putting it into these different buckets and breaking it down so that it would build on itself. And the power of compounding interest, that $50 a month that he didn't notice, all of a sudden becomes a few $1,000s that's sitting there that he can actually make an impact with. It was just so powerful to hear that we could all go out today and start saying, you know what? You could take $5 every month and put it aside into something. And $5 doesn't sound like a lot now, yet by the time your kids grow up, imagine if you just put aside $5 every month, how much money you'd have sitting in an account for those kids to do something with.
Yeah. One of the things, it's start now, right? The best time to start was yesterday, but the second best time is now. Every day that we wait on this is just another day we've lost compound interest, another day that we haven't created the habit of it. Yeah.
Powerful. Powerful stuff yet again. All right, remember to subscribe wherever it is you get your podcast from. And if you don't know where to go, just go to winmakegive.com. Find the link that's there. You'll be able to get to the videos. You'll be able to get to the audio, the podcast, however it is that you want to hear what we've got coming. We've got some great episodes ahead. And until then, remember, go out there and do good.